Hello, and welcome to another Bananamelia session breakdown. A Bananamelia session breakdown with me, Bananamelia. And the track that we're looking at today is C'est Chic. C'est Chic. Basically, I thought it would be funny to call a track "C'est Chic" after a track called "French Press," and also I just kind of wanted it to be a little bit, easy breezy, Parisian. But yeah, let's have a look at what's going on, and then we can kind of talk more about the overall vibes. So we open up with this telephone sound. My favorite telephone. Oh, it's so perfect. I think originally it's like sampled out of a trailer for a thing that like a Tumblr video, and I didn't even ever use Tumblr, but someone was like, "Oh, you should watch this thing," and there was someone in it has an old telephone because that's very Tumblr, and I was like, "Yes, perfect." But that was like 15 years ago, so I could very well be misremembering, but it's a strong telephone. And then we go right into this, which is actually a sample of the guitar from the previous track. I think I've probably cropped it so you can't actually hear. You can't really hear any more of it. I can't like zoom out, but you can hear it's in stereo. You get that little at the end of it. Yeah, this is just I think all of the guitars taken as like a cross section from the end of French Press, and then chucked into this sampler here with not a lot of processing happening. Head Crusher, which is my my go-to saturation plugin, is basically on a lot of stuff, and you can see the drive knob isn't even turned up. Basically, none of the knobs. It looks like maybe I've pushed up the low cut a tiny bit, but it's kind of just giving a little bit of color. Each of these different settings have a kind of a different. You can kind of hear it changes the tonal quality slightly. Yeah. And so this is kind of just like shaping the sound a little bit, giving a little bit more of an edge. And so after that we come in and we've got this extremely MIDI piano glissando. And this chord progression that doesn't 100% match what is happening in the sample. Of course, down here we've got the ride, and you can't really hear it, but there's like a filter sweep going on. Don't use a lot of those on the record. There are some filters on things, but they're usually just static. I love doing stuff like that. It brings me a lot of joy. So I mean, there's like a little drum fill which you think is going to go into the beat, and then no, you get this like sample and hold thing that is called computer sound. I don't know where I got this from because I didn't have any synths that were capable of that had a sample and hold section. Basically, a sample and hold is like, so usually if you put like an LFO on something, it like moves whatever it's affecting up and down. So like it will move the pitch gradually up and down. This one, it like takes a snapshot every certain amount of time. And so you get this stepped effect. This. Yeah, so it's not evenly moving up and down. It's like do 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 do. And it's a sound, it's a sound that's very cool, very 70s to me. Definitely called it computer sound because there's a Casio preset on some of the 80s keyboards that is called computer sound that is doing a similar thing. But I think this one is probably from, there are a lot of like those 90s sample CDs that will have like little buzzy computer noises. And then we're into kind of the main body, where there is quite a lot happening actually. Oh, apologies for a little bit of dropout, but what do we got? We've got maybe the only like actual bass line on the record, I guess. I guess the first track has an actual bass line, but most of the other ones it's like a sub playing either just very long held notes or a very simple rhythm that is exactly the root notes. But this is doing kind of like a little disco thing. And to go with the little disco thing, we've got 909 kick. Oh, doesn't it sound good? And to get a little bit more cut through on the kick, I've added, it's called Happy Hardcore Kick because Happy Hardcore has these really distorted kicks, and because like 909 style kicks have this big pitch sweep at the front that gets really accentuated with the distortion, and so it goes kind of like and this one I've put a really intense high pass on, otherwise it would be going a bit hard, which is not the kind of the vibe of the track, but it does help that kind of cut through. More 909. Oh, it's fun, it's cute. Basically, my idea, part of the idea for this album, because it was really like conceptualized as a whole, and I've said many times that I made it all in order, but I really wanted it to be like a good mixtape, and a good mixtape is not all one kind of song. That's a kind of actually a bad mixtape. A good mixtape is like a bunch of kind of complementary, different kinds of things. And one compilation that I was really inspired by was the Shibuya K Sushi 4004 comp, which had some like breakbeat tracks and had some like sample delica like things. And then it had a couple of tracks. There's one called Yukari Disco that is kind of what, like, it doesn't sound really much like the song at all, but it has like a very similar kind of like very straight up like 909 disco beat under it. And I was like, well, I need to have the kind of like must-haves for the record was I needed one. I knew there were going to be like naught classic break tracks, but then I was like, I need one like this. I need like a four to the floor like unsa unsa track, and I knew I needed to have one like gap selection, which we'll get to eventually. Like a kind of like big down tempo halftime number. What else have we got here? Cute little, yeah, good. And then we got you can see that I have obviously, most of the tracks have very like complicated evolving break cuts. So not this one, it has like a pattern that repeats over and over, and you can tell I've copied and pasted it because the filter is moving even though it's turned off. Running it through this LA2A, this is like a free plugin that models the LA2A classic Opto tube compressor. Opto tube probably doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but basically an Opto compressor just uses little lights and little things that are sensitive to light to control how it does the compression, which gives it a very kind of like squishy, soft feel. Most people would not recommend using these on drums, but I quite like it. And you can, especially for something like a break where it's going to be like it's like a whole kit, and it's in with a whole lot of other stuff. I just quite like it, and you can tell it's giving quite a lot of gain reduction, but it doesn't sound like overly compressed. It's like nice and subtle. So what else have we got going on? Let's unsolo. Oh, we got the melody. So, guitar sample still going. That wasn't what the piano actually sounded like. That was my computer struggling. But this is what the piano actually sounds like. I think it's just playing in octaves, yeah. This little melody. And is it being doubled by the strings? Yeah. So basically, this synth was kind of like the last, got kind of recorded after everything else. So I basically had set up this groove between the bass and that little guitar sample, and wrote this little melody with the piano and strings over the top, and then also this other section before I came back and added all of these synths. So let's have a listen to what kind of happens, and then we can come back and talk about this real life synth that's used on it, which might be the first time on the album, which is exciting. Oh, sorry. Oh, I gotta mute more of these guys. All right. So you can see this bit is just playing that little intro progression again. This one over here, and it's no longer got the guitar to like clash with a little bit. And then it moves into this, which is a very bizarre little chord progression. Quite jazz, I guess. not any kind of real jazz, but vaguely jazz. And if I recall correctly, I think I probably wrote the string melody. I probably put in the string melody and the low notes, like the bass line, first, to work out like exactly how this was going to go, and then filled it in with the kind of like most interesting, colorful notes I could manage. It's a little bit odd, but I liked the idea of moving from this, like, this extremely kind of like basic two chord kind of very major key normal vamp into like something a little bit like moody, wistful, complicated, but with like a very simple melody on top. That's like, I think I've already talked about how that's a lot of what I am trying to do in the record. Is like one thing is complicated and the other thing is simple, and it switches back and forth. So in this one, a lot of things are simple a lot of the time, and then suddenly the chord progression gets quite like unusual. Um, yeah. Um, so let's talk about this synth. So this is my Gen Essex 1000 synthetone, which is a synth that has been called the poor man's Moog, although after I moved to Australia a while ago, I was like, oh, I wonder if I could buy one of those over here, because I left my New Zealand one in the care of my dear friend and label boss, Zach Arnold. And the prices have gone bananas. So, I mean, it's still probably cheap relative to like a Moog, but it's not the poor man's anything really anymore. But I got it for a couple hundred, maybe $300 or $400 on Trade Me. And it's a very simple single oscillator synth, but it sounds so like old. Like, it looks like a big toy. I think they were made as like a kit set, basically. And this track is the first place where it comes in, and then it gets used quite a bit on the rest of the album. And these are just kind of doubling an octave higher, but it's just like a square portamento lead, very basic. I think a lot of the time when people think about like synthesis and like doing stuff with synths, it's like, oh, I gotta program like a complicated thing. I gotta do cross modulation. I gotta have 3 oscillators. I gotta have all this stuff. I think actually like a lot of it is kind of just getting the perfect, like, you can tell this has like a slightly soft attack and like a little bit of release in the portmanteau, and it sounds a little bit janky by itself, but with everything else, it's kind of great, and it's like lagging behind everything a little bit. I think I talked in the last video about how I got arthritis just before I made this record, but I do have extremely distinctive memories of recording these parts, just all of them in like one afternoon, and then my hand kind of like swelling up like a big pink balloon, which was not glamorous or lovely at all, but I think it was worth it. It sounds good. And really, like, this synth part is kind of the key to making this bit make sense. Because with just the strings, it sounds kind of like some linking material. I think it just sounds like we're kind of like, oh, and we're going somewhere in order to get ready to come back. But with the lead kind of like moving up and playing this like mirroring. Yeah. Well, abrupt tone shift. We come to my single regret of the record now, which is this thing down here called Synth Warble. My one regret of the record is that I made this so quiet. You barely can hear it in the final mix. And I think, like, obviously that makes everything less weird and easier to understand. If it was like, it definitely gets in the way of the lead. Look, maybe that would have been fine. But this is like my favorite sound, and you just don't get to really appreciate it on the album. So this is more of the Gen Essex 1000 synthetone, I mean, so the filter on it does not get high. It can't self-oscillate. which is where if you turn the resonance up on some filters, they start making their own tone. And in fact, if you turn up, for whatever reason, like the way that the filter is built on the synthetone, it just gets really horrible sounding if you turn the resonance all the way up. But you can turn it quite far up and then get these kind of like fun filter effects. So this is basically like a single note getting through a very like resonant filter, and then I'm messing with the LFO, like the speed of the LFO. And it's the best thing. It's the best part of the track, but we don't get to hear it really. So, I mean, this track is interesting to me because it has become like the runaway success of the record. Like, I was not expecting this to be a single, let alone the most kind of like widely heard and beloved part of the album. I guess partly because it is so kind of like cute and nice and basic. But it has been. Zach from Sun Return chose it as a single. It gets used in like TV spots. Like people will send me videos from 7 Sharp of like a guy getting attacked by a hawk, and behind a guy getting attacked by a hawk will be this song. Usually not this section, but it's I mean, I guess that's kind of a success for what I was going for in a way, because like, aside from the disco thing, I kind of wanted this to be a kind of like very basic, you can kind of sing the melody. It's like one of those kind of like Enoch Light, like 1960s, early 70s, like light music kind of, you know, disco's there, so they got to put a beat behind it, but it's like the most kind of like whistle while you walk type thing is like what I was going for. And the fact that people have kind of like latched onto it, I guess, means that worked. But it's quite funny to me. Basically here we have this like recapitulation of the bit from French Press with Maddie singing, and because basically the whole first side of the record is in the same key, and the melody is relatively simple, it just works over this other chord progression. And very shocking to me when I put it in, it fits very nicely with the little main melody. I was just happy that worked. That was not, I did not spend hours agonizing over that. I just chucked it in and it happened, which is great. The DJ scratch is the real evidence that I've been listening to like 90s music. I don't think there were many other tracks released in the year that this came out that had DJ scratches in there. This is just the same again. Not many times on the record do I have basically the exact same section twice. The only difference is that instead of this ride, which kind of disappears in the second part of the track, we've got this shaker, and it gives it kind of a subtly different vibe, but not hugely. Yeah. This is my pop song, and I will repeat sections in their entirety. But then we mellow out. And again, it is mostly the same. It's just I've dropped everything out. Brought in my little CR78 bossa nova break from the start. And this kind of slightly goofy bit that we're just coming into. Oh, it makes me laugh every time. Is maybe a good time to talk about something that people kind of ask me about relatively often. Is like, so I'm trans and gay, and people all the time are asking like, so is your music also trans and gay? That's kind of a goofy way to put it, but people are interested in how like this kind of like slightly niche life experience translates into the music. And there was definitely a while where I was like, it doesn't, I just make music. Like, I was kind of unrelated. But I don't know, I think I kind of have been like thinking about it a little bit more, and I feel like kind of it comes out, I think, especially in a track like this, in this kind of like goofy, kind of like playful, I think quite like feminine recontextualization of like big time dance music stuff, like big distorted kick, kind of like 4 to the floor, 909 dance music stuff. And the other tracks have like amen breaks and kind of like macho stuff. And I've got these like big kind of like light music, Tin Pan Alley chord progressions. I've got this extremely silly MIDI piano kind of like jaunt. And it's this combination of these things that I think, if there is an element of my music that is like queer, or however you want to put it, I think it's probably that, right? And I think I'm pretty happy with that as my answer. That might be my go-to from now on. But yeah, this little breakdown, whenever I play this track live, this little our little MIDI piano glass again. This little piano breakdown makes me laugh every time. Just because it sounds like the MIDI is being played by the wrong instrument. Like, it sounds like you've written something to be played by something, and obviously it's like me trying to kind of like write in what that sampled guitar is playing onto the guitar. But I think it's so funny how kind of like wrong it sounds, but also like with the shaker it's so kind of like sweet and cute. I'm very happy with it. And then we have our little kind of like little arp riser, little kind of fairy noise. And we're into the end of the track, which is that kind of like B section of the melody, but without the synth melody, which does sound, as I said before, basically makes it into linking material, which this bit is. It's kind of linking material for the next track. And so it's also doing that by losing the big like 909 kind of disco beat and kind of moving into this very skittish, skittering think break. which is going to take us directly into... That's where Color Box starts. With a very similar chord progression to this. Maybe, actually, is it? I think it is this. I think it is this chord progression. It might even be that MIDI, which is quite funny to me. And yeah, we got the simplified bass line for it, and we've moved over to the sine bass. This is what I was saying. That one's actually a bass line. This one is. Just kind of like stepping through the motions. I hope you can hear that. Probably if you're listening on your phone speakers, that was just me listening to some silence. And then we've also got the kind of the fade in of the cicadas, which is like the kind of an important bit of the start of Color Box. And yeah, that is, I guess, everything to say about Say Chic. Is it everything to say about Say Chic? Yeah, it's like relatively simple. And I think that's always the way with making music, is that you think the ones that are like really complicated and hundies are the ones that everyone's going to like because it took you so long to make it right and now it's perfect. Whereas ones like this, I'm kind of like, and I'll loop this beat and we'll have this big section and then we'll go to a different thing and then we'll come back and have that section again. But I guess I just, it just all worked out. Yeah. Say Chic.